The penultimate episode of Silo Season 2 is here, and I think this could well be the best episode that we've had in the season, and I'm so glad that it happened right before the finale too, because it's been set up so well. With us seeing Bernard having quite literally nobody left on his side, us finding out the emotional, tragic backstory to Solo, the identity of the three people that attacked Solo and Jules, and there actually being a tunnel at the bottom of the silo that Lukas Kyle discovered from Salvador Quinn's note. There's so much to unpack from this week's episode. So with that, let's dive into it and break down all that there was to take away from it. Here is Silo Season 2 Episode 9, Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. What is the safeguard? One of the key things in this episode was centered around Lukas Kyle and the decoding of the letter that Salvador Quinn left. We saw that he managed to decipher more of it, and it led him to read the words, "Go to the bottom of the silo, find the tunnel, you will get confirmation." This is something that we saw happen during the ending of the episode. Lukas Kyle made his way down to the spot where George and Jules would go for their romantic getaways, and Kyle came to the conclusion that the water beneath them may not have actually been that deep, so the tunnel that he was looking for could have been accessible to him. Once Kyle made it down to the water, he stumbled across a tunnel, and a voice spoke to him. It said, "Lukas Kyle, why are you here?" And it then proceeded to tell him that only 3 people had ever made it there before. Salvador Quinn, which would have been 140 years ago, Mary Meadows, who was previously the judge, so that told us that she definitely knew more than she was letting on, and also George Wilkins. The voice then said that if Lukas Kyle told anybody about the conversation, then the safeguard would be initiated. This would make sense as to why Judge Meadows never told anybody about the information that she knew about, and that she made it down below to the tunnel. We know that she developed a problem with drinking, so what's to say that that wasn't the very thing that drove her to the point of alcoholism, truly learning the truth, hence why she also stepped away from Bernard at that point too. Whatever she heard, it must have changed her mindset and the way that she lived her life for good. So it's gonna be interesting to see how Lukas Kyle acts following him finding out whatever information he's gonna hear. We don't specifically know what the safeguard is, but one would have to presume that it would be something that would be on a large scale. Something that would cause the individuals to not risk people that they care about. So maybe the safeguard could be something that impacts the silo on a massive scale. When it comes to the Order and the Pact, levels of information are limited amongst different types of people, and the whole idea of people not truly knowing what the outside is like, with some believing that it might be a paradise, and others believing that it's a barren wasteland, is what keeps people inside. Uncertainty and not truly knowing. So if Lukas Kyle starts revealing the truth to people and the information that he hears, then maybe the silo could end up being compromised. There was a piece of dialogue that was important that was almost looked over in the episode. This was when Lukas Kyle said to Bernard that there were 50 silos, and Bernard corrected him and said that there were 51, but he didn't know why. I think this almost insinuates that there are 50 silos that essentially mirror each other, and this extra one almost acts as a central hub, and what one could describe as the main silo, monitoring and watching over all of the other ones and seeing how they act. This could be why there's a tunnel at the bottom of every silo, so that they can access them whenever they need to without stepping outside. This one silo could dictate what happens and truly be the silo that makes the decisions. Each individual in a silo, other than the head of IT and their shadow, believes that they're the only people that are in existence and that the world outside is destroyed. They don't know of any other silos, so the people in the main silo could well be looking at every silo as if it's an ant farm, watching them change and grow over time and seeing how they respond to different stimuli. Lukas Kyle is about to find out the truth, the very thing that Salvador Quinn wanted somebody to find out. Unlike Meadows, whose life was tainted by the information that she found out, I think Lukas Kyle will do something with the information. He said to his mother how he regretted not doing anything when Jules went to him and was looking for help. So this time, I don't think he'll sit by and do nothing. Solo's true identity. I'm not gonna lie, I actually welled up a little bit during the story with Solo this week. There were 2 moments in particular. The moment where we found out his backstory and that he had to watch his father being killed in front of him because he refused to open the door to the vault. The very order that he was given by his father to make sure that he survived. And also when he put his hand on Jules and we saw that there was an element of care that was there between the both of them. The story of Jules being in Silo 17 reached its crescendo in this week's episode, and it was orchestrated perfectly. We saw these three individuals, Ita, Rick, and Audrey, and their perspective of everything that happened from the moment Jules got into Silo 17 to the moment where she was being faced with an arrow from Audrey. They were offspring of survivors of the rebellion, and two of their parents were actually killed by Solo. Tess was Rick's mother and Chase was Audrey's father, and they went on a quest of trying to get inside of the vault, something which they managed to achieve by working through a set of different codes. Codes that were written on the wall that Jules erased a few episodes back because she didn't know what the numbers were. It was when their parents made it into the vault with a successful code that they shot Solo whilst he was asleep, and then took some food. However, Solo woke up and then he proceeded to drain the air from the room, which meant that they suffocated. This is why both Audrey and Rick had a vendetta against Solo, because they viewed him as a murderer without truly knowing the full story. Jules went all detective in this episode and pieced together that Solo was the head of IT, Russell Conroy's son, meaning that Solo's actual name was Jimmy Conroy, and he was 12 when the rebellion happened. Solo watching his father die tied back to the first episode when we saw the sheriff rubbing the blood off of his face when he said that things escalated. Solo acted like a kid because he was a kid when the rebellion happened, and he spent the rest of his life in isolation, standing by his father's words and not wanting to let him down. He never communicated with anybody, hence why he still had the tone of voice of a 12-year-old. Solo went through a lot, and I felt so deeply and emotionally connected to him when he was telling his backstory. He was a traumatized boy and was protecting the vault because his father told him to, and he watched him die for it and then have his lifeless body be dragged away in front of him. Honestly, what a poor kid. We actually saw why Solo also knew of a lot of different things, such as elephants, the circus, music, and many things that not everybody else knew of. This was because he had access to all of the information that Bernard had inside of the vault in his silo. Jules also found another suit when she was looking to decipher the code for the vault. This was inside Russell Conroy's apartment. However, she didn't take the suit and run. She instead did what she could in order to make sure that Solo survived, showing that she cared for him. Their journey together in this season is one that's had its ups and downs. He saved her life several times, and I think her not just leaving and abandoning him was her returning the favor. It's definitely going to be sad watching them say goodbye to one another, and I hope this isn't the end for them. Bernard is now on his own. Oh, Bernard, you have a smile, but Knox is definitely playing to find out if she's the rat. So the plan that you think is going to happen most probably isn't. Bernard started this season with Meadows, Sims, and the Sheriff, and he also adopted Lukas Kyle. But this episode showed us that he no longer has any allies, and he's in fact on his own. Lukas Kyle was the shadow to the head of IT, but with Bernard not giving him the time of day when he needed him, we saw that Lukas Kyle went off on his own. Hence why he ended up finding the tunnel and liaising with Shirley and the people from the lower levels. He was friends with Juliet, and him being back down there and hoping to find the truth showed that he was now back on side with them. Paul Billings was continuing to question his position and why it was that he was chosen to be the sheriff, and we saw that he realized that it was because he was somebody that would fall in line and carry out orders like he was a puppet, not because he was a firm, strong leader. His wife Kathleen is also looking to seek the truth about the world outside, and if it was still like that. This is something that I think is going to be detrimental. I actually think that we're going to see a mirrored arc like what happened with Allison and Holston in Season 1. Paddy Kennedy was telling her about what Allison said when she said that the display is a lie and that the world outside might look like what the picture that Billings has is. I feel she could grow obsessed just like Allison did and it become an infection in her mind that won't be able to get cured until she steps foot outside and sees for herself. That could make Paul Billings even more of a broken man and resent the silo even more, further cementing himself on the side of the lower levels. Sims even turned on Bernard completely by allying with Billings after he was shown that very same image of what the outside world once looked like. Him and Camille were now planning on going into the server room to see what was truly behind the door that's gatekept by Bernard. Bernard has a war coming towards him on all fronts, and only Amundsen is there alongside him. Billings, Sims, and Knox are coming at him from all angles, and he's not going to be able to defend them all. Knox digging out the rat. Knox said in this episode that he knew who the rat was amongst the people of the lower levels, and prior to him going to Martha to reveal to her that he believed that it was Teddy's mother, she was actually feeling guilty over what happened. Knox made out to Walker that the leftover gunpowder from Supplier was going to be used in the next plan that gets carried out. I think this is definitely a decoy, and he's revealing this information to only her to see if preparations get made in order to defend against an attack that won't happen. This will change the dynamic of Mechanical completely. And the thing with Mechanical is, they always look out for one another. So she could be in for a very uncomfortable ride moving forward where she becomes an outcast. My review of the episode. This was definitely the best episode in the entirety of the season. The pacing of it was spot on, and even though it was an hour, it didn't feel like it was that long. There were just so many revelations that connected to many of the previous episodes that I was just loving the reveals and my head was spinning constantly. The whole first 10 minutes of us seeing the perspective of Juliet's time in the silo from the 3 new characters joined some dots over why things were happening, such as her being saved when she fell in the water and how the rope was cut. For me, Solo stole this episode again. He's become one of my favourite characters in the show, and as I said earlier, some of his scenes made me feel quite emotional. Seeing the growth of the character, going from somebody that couldn't trust anybody, to then allowing several people inside of the vault felt like such progression, and like he was a transformed character. He went through some serious trauma that impacted him decades later, but Jules helped him overcome it. And in a silo that was riddled with death, a new life was found in Silo, and I think there's beauty in that. I actually don't have any complaints over the darkness of the episode this week. Even the scenes in Silo 17 didn't feel as dark as what they have been, so I have no qualms with the visuals for this episode. With us finding out that there's essentially a higher power and what looks like a main player in watching all of the 50 other silos, that makes things a whole lot more interesting moving forward. I do wonder whether or not Jules will make it back to Silo 18 by the end of the next episode. I hope she does, because it would make things even more difficult for Bernard moving forward. With there being 2 suits in Silo 17, I also wonder if Ita is going to go with her and find a new life in Silo 18. I kinda want that for the character, because Audrey treated her so poorly, she deserves a chance at a new life. With only 1 episode to go until Season 2 concludes, I'm excited to see how this season is going to end and just how eventful the finale is going to be. So, there you have it, Silo Season 2 Episode 9, Ending Explained. If you want to see more videos on Silo Season 2 being broken down, then click on the card in the top corner, there's a playlist there. Or alternatively, you can head over to my channel where you'll find them all. What did you think of this episode? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. As always, thanks for tuning into the video and I'll see you in the next one.